Scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. Korea time at the Peace House located on the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjom. Let's just listen to what the South Korean delegation had to say before leaving Seoul.
Today we'll discuss overall inter-Korean forestation cooperation and specific measures to implement it. I believe there could be discussions on tree nursery and technology as North Korea is putting emphasis on them.
It's also expected that the two delegations will touch upon holding joint studies on North Korean forests degraded by over-logging and farming. And South Korea's three-member delegation is led by the Vice Minister of the South Korean Forest Service, Ryu Kwang-soo, and North Korea's three-member delegation is also being led by Kim Sung-jun, a senior official at the North's Ministry of Environmental Protection. Staying with the topic, we dig a little deeper into some of the potential projects that could actually take effect as the two sides are sitting down today for talks on a joint forestry program. In the first part of our two-part series, we take a look at the inter-Korean efforts to make both Koreas a bit more greener. It marks the comeback of a once jointly run project between the two Koreas. The two sides once held hands on joint forestry projects in the late 1990s. But those projects were put on the back burner in 2010 when tensions spiked following a series of military provocations by North Korea. However, with a cloud of tensions and threats now lifted, just like many other joint initiatives now being set up by Seoul and Pyongyang, this one may end up being a long-term project between the two. However, both sides are realistic, considering the reality of North Korea's circumstances. Some 2.8 million hectares of forest had been cut down in North Korea as of 2008, and that's nearly double the amount of bare land compared to just a decade earlier. It's so bad that a UK-based risk consulting company assessed North Korea's deforestation as the third worst in the world in 2012.
Precisely understanding the situation in North Korea is the most crucial first step. It's necessary if the two sides are going to be able to make a difference. However, we believe it will be different this time due to Pyongyang's determination.
That determination reflected in its leader Kim Jong-un's efforts to restore a semblance of environmental care in his country, announcing plans to plant 6.5 billion trees by 2023, and even opening up a forestry science school at the elite Kim Il-sung University in Pyongyang. The forestry project between the two Koreas, although still very much in its infancy, could branch out in a number of ways. Comprehensive projects related to forest and agriculture already seem to be coming down the pipeline. Related businesses' stock prices have shot up over the past couple of weeks, especially those involved in forest restoration, cultivating saplings, and mineral exploration, and even seed production.
We're looking to start with cabbage, corn, broccoli, and radish. Crops like these bring about quick benefits, especially with some of them being native to our soil. They are most suitable when we consider the environmental circumstances.
The sentiment this time is more positive, with North Korea showing a strong inclination to follow through on its pledges. Environmentalists here in South Korea have one thing in mind: improving this fertile land bestowed to us by our ancestors and adding a lot more greenery along the way. And keeping up with this momentum, the two Koreas will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the independence movement against Japan and the establishment of Korea's provincial government next year. Our Kim Min-ji tells us more.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in has called for joint projects with North Korea to commemorate the 100th anniversary next year of the March 1st independence movement in 1919 against Japan's colonial rule. He made the remarks at a ceremony launching a committee to prepare for the anniversary of the movement and for the establishment of Korea's provisional government in exile in the same year. The president noted that sharing the history of Korea's independence can promote cross-border reconciliation.
70년을 이어온 남북 분단과 적대는 독립운동의 역사도 갈라놓았습니다. 지난 4월 27일 저와 김정은 위원장은 3.1운동 100주년 남북 공동기념사업 추진을 논의했고 판문점 선언에 그 취지를 담았습니다. 남과 북이 독립운동의 역사를 함께 공유하게 된다면 서로의 마음도 더 가까워질 수 있을 것이라고 생각합니다.
The committee, which includes some 100 private individuals and government officials, will be tasked with preparing events that will commemorate the sacrifices of patriots and look back at Korea's developments over the past century, as well as prepare for the next 100 years based on peace and democracy. President Moon has put great emphasis on the 100th anniversary as he considers the start of the provisional government to be the foundation of modern Korea.
3.1운동과 임시정부 수립 100주년을 기념하는 일이 정의롭고 공정한 나라의 토대가 되어야 할 것입니다. 100주년 기념사업 하나하나가 우리의 역사적 자긍심의 근거가 될 것입니다.
The committee will draw up a comprehensive plan for the commemorative event sometime between August and September. 김민지, 아리랑 뉴스.
Shifting focus, U.S. President Donald Trump has taken to Twitter again to say that talks with North Korea are, quote, going well, as Washington seeks to reach an agreement with Pyongyang over a denuclearization timeline. President Trump also said the regime has conducted no rocket launches or nuclear tests in the past 8 months, adding that if it weren't for him, the U.S. would be at war with the North. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov discussed a series of issues over the phone Tuesday to prep for the July 16th summit between the leaders of the two countries being held in Helsinki. The State Department says that they exchanged opinions on Syria, North Korea, as well as the details of President Trump's summit with his Russian counterpart, President Putin. U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton visited Moscow last week to meet with Lavrov and Putin to prepare for the first official summit between President Trump and Putin. Turning to the Russia World Cup, and Tuesday saw the last pair of round of 16 ties. Sweden took on Switzerland in the day's first game, and at the last game, a fiery and nail-biting affair between England and Colombia. Telling us which two countries rounded out the quarterfinal roster is our Lee Seung-jae.
The tournament's final round of 16 matches kicked off in St. Petersburg, where Group F winner Sweden went head-to-head with Group E runners-up Switzerland. Sweden, who qualified for the World Cup by beating Italy in the playoffs, looked to continue their dream run. Despite Switzerland controlling possession for most of the match, the first half ended goalless. The deadlock was broken in the 66th minute when Sweden's Emil Forsberg found space on the edge of the box, and his strike deflected off Swiss defender Manuel Akanji and passed the goalkeeper for a 1-0 lead. The Swedish defense did the rest as Sweden held on to win and advanced to the World Cup quarterfinals for the first time in 24 years. Sweden knew they'll be playing the winner of the final round of 16 match, Colombia versus England. The match at a deadlock at 0-0 after the first half. Colombia's Carlos Sanchez fouls inside the penalty area in the 54th minute, giving England a penalty. Harry Kane, the tournament's leading scorer, confidently drilling the ball down the middle for his 6th goal of the tournament. 5 minutes added to stoppage time, and a corner is given to Colombia 2 minutes in, and it's Yerry Mina to the rescue for the South Americans, as his header sends this match into extra time at 1 goal apiece. No further goals in extra time meant penalties. England held their nerve, winning 4-3. The result means England will play in the quarterfinal against Sweden on Saturday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign exchange reserves were at a record high for the 4th month in a row in June. The Bank of Korea says the total value as of last month was $400.3 billion, topping the $400 billion mark for the first time. Korea's foreign exchange reserves surpassed $100 billion back in 2001, $200 billion in 2005, and $300 billion in 2011. The Bank of Korea attributed the rise to increased gains from investment in foreign assets, and as of the end of May, South Korea had the world's 9th largest foreign exchange reserves, with China topping the list. Amid the ongoing trade spat between the U.S. and China, the Trump administration is moving to ban China Mobile, a state-owned Chinese wireless carrier, from entering the American market, citing national security concerns. According to David Reddle, the Assistant Secretary for Communications and Information at the U.S. Department of Commerce, quote, concerns about increased risks to U.S. law enforcement and national security interests were unable to be resolved, despite significant engagement with the wireless carrier. Any ban would require the Federal Communications Commission's approval, and China's Mobile is the world's largest telecom carrier with some 900 million subscribers. The Trump administration's tariff policy is being met with retaliatory tariffs by Washington's trade partners. While China has warned of countermeasures, the other members of NAFTA, namely Canada and Mexico, are also slapping heavy duties on American imports. Our Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
Nations across the world are imposing retaliatory tariffs against the United States in response to the Trump administration's controversial tariff policy. China has warned it's fully prepared to take countermeasures against Washington's hefty trade tariffs on Chinese imports that are due to take effect from Friday. The U.S. plans to begin imposing a 25% tariff on Chinese goods worth $34 billion.
China is fully prepared to take a package of necessary measures in a comprehensive way to safeguard the interests of the country and the people should the U.S. roll out the so-called tariff list.
Beginning this week, Canada slapped retaliatory tariffs on nearly $13 billion of goods manufactured in America, including chocolate, orange juice, and coffee. The move is in response to President Trump's levying of tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. Mexico hit back by imposing up to 25% tariffs on American steel and cheese starting from June, and made it official that a 20% tariff will be imposed on American pork from Thursday. As Mexico imported $1 billion of pork from the U.S. last year, such a measure is expected to hit American pork producers hard. The European Union also condemned Trump's tariff policy, imposing a 25% tariff on 180 goods produced in the U.S. The world's largest economic bloc warned Washington that imposing import duties on cars and automobile parts would damage its own industry and lead to counter tariffs on nearly $300 billion of U.S. imports. USA Today reports that the price of cars could jump by several $1,000s once the Trump administration begins levying tariffs on imported cars. The U.S. Department of Commerce is looking to slap tariffs of up to 25% on imported vehicles, as instructed by President Trump, who said in May that continuing automobile imports at current levels could impair U.S. national security. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
And South Korea's second biggest airline, the Asiana Airlines, is being bombarded by complaints due to a severe shortage of in-flight meals. A major supplier issue means its planes have been taking off without enough meals for days, and it appears there's no easy fix. Our Kim Mo-kyun explains.
For the third consecutive day, dozens of flights of Asiana Airlines have been delayed due to problems with the supply of in-flight meals. The delays continue, but in the first 2 days, the airline says nearly 70 flights were held up by more than an hour, and more than 50 others had to depart with no meals at all. The problem started at Asiana's suppliers. The fire broke out at the catering service used by the airline, a company called Gate Gourmet Korea. Asiana had only recently signed with Gate Gourmet at the start of this year. After the fire, to keep its meal supplies going, Asiana signed a temporary 3-month contract with a small company with only 68 employees. Asiana needs some 25,000 meals a day, but the small company was apparently overwhelmed, having previously handled only 3,000 meals a day. Asiana has insisted the supplier was up to the job, but had run into difficulties with logistics and transport. Asiana's CEO has posted a public apology on the firm's website, explaining that the airline is working to normalize its in-flight meal service as soon as possible. The carrier is currently providing a gift certificate worth up to about $45 to passengers who are not able to get their meals. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Efforts to rescue 12 boys and their football coach trapped inside a flooded cave in Thailand are ongoing, with officials saying that it could take months for them to be extracted. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Aram at the News Center. So Aram, what's the latest on that front?
Well, some of the 13 have received their first food and medical treatment in 10 days. This includes a gel with high calorie and mineral content to sustain them while rescue plans are being worked out. Several divers, including a doctor and counsellor, have been staying with the group since they were found on Monday. A telephone line is also being installed so parents can speak to their children. Officials are insisting there's no rush to get them out, stressing their physical condition should improve first. After that, several extraction options are being considered. One is to wait until water levels subside, which could take months. Water pumps are draining the caves, but heavy rain is hampering those efforts. It's also the start of the monsoon season, so there is a risk of water levels rising even higher. Another option is to train the boys and their coach to dive through 4 kilometers of the submerged cave network. That process will also take weeks, if not months, and the group is too weak to even attempt a dive at the moment. 49 out of 55 member nations of the African Union have signed a continental free trade agreement. South Africa, Sierra Leone, Namibia, Lesotho and Burundi were the latest members to sign the AfCFTA at the end of the 31st AU summit on Tuesday. Nigeria abstained, saying it wants more time to consult with relevant stakeholders. Chad and Swaziland ratified the agreement, which brings the total number of ratifications to 6. 16 more ratifications are needed for the trade deal to come into force. The AU says the continental free trade deal could create an African market of over 1.2 billion people with a GDP of $2.5 trillion. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has reached a deal on immigration, saving a potential breakup of her 4-month-old coalition government. Interior Minister Horst Seehofer had threatened to resign if Merkel didn't stop migrants who applied for asylum in other EU nations. He eventually dropped his threat after Merkel agreed to tighten control along the Austrian border. However, the deal drew scepticism on Tuesday from her centre-left Social Democrat partners, who said more talks and work were needed. The key sticking point is a plan to set up transit centres, which are facilities where migrants will be held until they can be deported to the EU country they first registered in. The SDP is also opposed to these centres, and without its consent, Merkel and Seehofer's agreement remains in limbo.
Good morning. Typhoon Prapirun lashed Korea's Jeju Island and Gyeongsang-Namdo coastline yesterday, but the typhoon has shifted course to the east now. So parts of the East Sea and Korea's easternmost islands of Dokdo and Ulleungdo are now under typhoon alerts with heavy showers this morning. Meanwhile, the rest of the country will have a very humid and hot day under mostly sunny skies, with a chance of passing monsoon showers in the forecast for some parts of the country during the day, so have your umbrella handy. Temperature-wise, southern regions will also notice a big jump in temperatures today, with highs ranging from 30 to 32 degrees Celsius across much of the country, getting up to 31 degrees here in the capital, Chuncheon and Gyeongju this afternoon. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So while most of South Korea will deal with humid weather under mostly sunny skies, some parts of North Korea will see sporadic showers. Beijing will continue to see burning sunshine and boiling hot temperatures. Over in Melbourne, winds of up to 100 km per hour will batter the city, and the windy weather will continue until the end of the week. Those in Washington, D.C. will have pleasant weather conditions for Independence Day, but it's going to be quite hot. As for South America, Rio de Janeiro and Santiago will both have a rainy Wednesday. Taking you to Europe, excessive heat in Rome is likely to last through Thursday. Lastly, to Africa, the scorching heat wave in Cairo shows no sign of easing up. And that's the weather update for now.
And that is our time at the hour on Arirang News, but keep it tuned for more news updates coming up at noon Korea time. Thank you for watching and goodbye for now.
Literally speaking, a comma in your life. Then